Welcome to another episode of Courageous Me. And today I've got the extremely courageous Lisa Britcliffe. Now, she's a whole lot of incredible things. Two in particular is a real estate agent, and she's a coach that helps women transition out of marriage. Which, even when she shared that, I thought, what a beautiful way of saying it, as opposed to the harshness of separation or divorce. So you can probably already start to get a flavour of what she's like. So Lisa, before we learn a bit more about you, could you just share why you're excited to have a conversation with me today about courage?
Firstly, because it's you, and I've known you for so long, and the fact that we're here having this conversation after knowing you for maybe, I think, 25 years. So when we initially met about a month ago, I was like, wow, I've known this woman for 25 years, and I'm actually getting to know who you are inside that conversation. So that's the first thing. I'm really excited to be with you today. I feel like my journey has embodied courage. And I think, I was saying to you just before we started press record was this morning, I felt like this channel opened up, knowing that we were going to step into a conversation around courage and all the things that I've had to do and chosen to do have actually embodied courage. So it just speaks to every part of me, this concept of this topic of courage.
That's so beautiful. And you're right. So I've been really, really close to your sister for about 25 years. And only now I'm starting to get to know who you are. And I would say one of the biggest things that's come out from, exploring more about you is courage. So excited to have you here. So given this has been quite a theme in your life, can you, in giving us a bit more of an insight into who you are, sort of talk about some of your background, but in particular where courage has played that role and maybe helped you make some decisions from as early back as you can remember?
And so what was really coming through this morning for me is that I think a lot of people think of courage as the big moments, those big choices, whether you choose to leave a marriage, it takes a lot of courage. Choosing to change jobs takes a lot of courage. Choosing to have kids. But where I got to this morning, what I've really thought about with courage is it's the small, subtle moments that make up somebody that really embodies courage. And so it's staying true to ourselves. So it's listening, for example, listening to that inner voice that's saying, actually, this is not for me anymore. Being willing to be honest with ourselves and hear that and to then act upon that. Now that takes an enormous amount of courage because most of us are not raised to follow our internal guidance. Most of us are raised to look externally. In fact, I'd say the human race, we look outside of ourselves for validation, what makes sense, how do I fit in, how do I belong, what do I need to do in order to be loved, to be safe, to belong, all of that. And so to actually come home to self, which has taken me a very long time to do that, to actually be able to hear what is true for me, what do I want, and then to voice that, when for a lot of the world, and this is another thing about courage, is it's not going to make sense to a lot of people. Our choices are not going to make sense. When I chose to leave my marriage, which was a good marriage, for most of the people that I knew, including my family, that did not make sense. And even a part of me, my mind, my ego was like, what are you doing? But there was an inner knowing that this was what I needed to do. That took massive amount of courage. Yes, that was a big choice. Were you going to say something?
No, I want to keep you going. Carry on, because this is so golden.
So there's those big choices. But I want to say in that moment where I knew, it was like the choice. The choice was chosen for me. Does that make sense? I didn't actually make that choice from the level of the mind. I went into a space. I'll just give you a bit of a background. I went to a meditation retreat that was being run by a guy called Dr. Joe Dispenza. Most of the world would have heard of Dr. Joe Dispenza. And I went into a very deep meditation. I went in married, and I came out knowing like I didn't want to admit it, that my marriage was not for ever. So in that moment, I was able to get beyond the level of the mind, and the mind would have had me talk myself out of or into remaining all the reasons why I wasn't working. I had a good lifestyle. I had 3 boys. How could I possibly do that? Break up a family and all the rest of it. So is that courage? Or is that just choosing to get beyond the level of the mind so we can access that deep inner knowing that knows when something is right, given that there is no right or wrong? And this is something I've battled with from the level of the mind, is being raised to know that there's a right way and a wrong way, that actually that doesn't exist. So how can we get beyond that passion? A lot of us are conditioned to buy into. What's the right choice? Is it a right choice for me to, for example, go back into real estate, which I've just recently done? Or is it a wrong choice where actually when we get beyond the level of the mind, it was a choice that came from inside of me that chose that for me? Is that courage?
Oh, Lisa. Yeah. Is that courage? And to someone, yeah. To someone else, maybe not. What's right, what's wrong there?
That's right. And so this also lends itself to something that was coming through is for you and I, it's complete. What courage looks like is different. Yeah. And so my
Totally.
way is not your way, and whoever's listening is not your way. So how do we find, I think really what I'm trying to communicate is ultimately is coming back to the core of who we are, which is a layering and unpacking and unlayering and unveiling so we can get to the core of who we are to actually go, okay, so I've made a choice. I'm in this relationship where I've chosen this job and I've invested. And this takes courage. Invested so much of my time, so much of my energy, so many resources into this relationship or this, I'm thinking now, when I came out of my marriage, I invested so much of my heart, my time, my money into building a coaching business. And because I had done that, there was so much invested. I couldn't hear the voice inside that was like, this is actually not where you're meant to be. So it took me getting really, really unwell about 6 months ago where I couldn't work. I had an acute headache that pretty much lasted for 5 weeks. And the only thing that I could hear was rest. That was the only message that kept coming through. Now that took courage because I'm a single mother. I have the cost of living. I live in a nice home. I have 3 boys. To actually honor that voice that said rest, because I realized that for the 5 years since I separated, I had not been able to rest my mind because of this need to build a business, to prove to myself that I was worthy and to prove to my boys that they had a mother that could support them and that didn't need their father to rely on. I mean, all of that was there.
Oh, Lisa, I've just got like a million questions coming through right now. Can I ask, this is such, just going back to what you said earlier on about courage is really about being true to who you are and almost like going home, going back inside and finding who you are. What started that for you? Because this is something, and I know it's the same journey that I'm on as well, and it's been a really big part of my life. But I love to know, where did that start for you? Because that is not something that everyone, wakes up thinking, oh yeah, I need to go on that little journey, as opposed to, going on that holiday. What started it for you?
And so I just want to speak to that, I do feel like there is a time for each of us where we will have that, something will spark that, and it's a timing thing, and it's a divine timing in everything in life. And so every single person that's listening, there will be, if there has not been, there will be a time, a moment, and it doesn't have to be when we reach rock bottom. It could be you listen to a conversation of what we're having, it's like, oh, I hadn't even, oh, there is that, oh, right. So for me, yes, I had to reach rock bottom, but I do not, I don't believe that has to happen for everyone. And that was that I had twin boys. That was 19 years ago. One of them was diagnosed on the spectrum. I had had bulimia for 20 years. I'd kind of had it under control. It came back with the diagnosis of one of my boys, and I just was not coping. I reached out to my hand in a moment of desperation, not for me, for my son, because he was the one that needed help. And I found myself in some random home on the other side of town, meeting a kinesiologist that looked at me and said, he doesn't need anything but your love. There's nothing wrong with him. And that went against everything that I believed, because I believed I was broken. I believed there was something wrong with me. And so I was projecting that to him and seeing him, and I needed to fix him. Because actually, I didn't. In loving me, and this has been this journey over the past 15 years, in learning to love me. And I'm not there, by the way. There are times I've got a harsh critic inside me, a harsh critic, and all the things. We've got many parts to us. That's a whole other conversation. But that was the moment that something opened up, and I went home and told my now ex-husband that I had had an eating disorder, which he was unaware of. And that completely changed the trajectory of my entire life. I was in real estate then. I was working with Rich, my ex-husband, and within 12 months, I started studying kinesiology. So then I went and studied kinesiology.
Wow.
Yeah.
And is that because the impact it had on you?
It was just a knowing that was the right next step. It was, I don't practice it now. I did for a little bit after I finished. It was a 2-year, and I absolutely left it up. It was like the first time in my life that I'd studied something that I was like all in. It just woke something up in me.
I love that. Can I ask, how did Richard take you after being with you and married to you and, having children? How did he take you then sharing that you'd had bulimia? How did that sort of play out?
I remember exactly where we were in our marital home. I remember exactly the place we were sitting, and he is you've met him. He's a beautiful human, and he was so accepting. He said, because I was so deeply afraid that it would change his view of me, that he wouldn't. I mean, that was an old pattern. I was deeply afraid that I wasn't going to be loved for who I was, and right then, that was who I was. Yeah, and he said, that doesn't change my love for you.
And how did that make you feel, given you hadn't anticipated that, which is probably why you'd held it back and not shared it? So what happened to you when he accepted you like that?
Well, then that opened up a whole pathway, which was part of the reason it took so much courage also to leave the relationship, given he had been so loving and so supportive of me following. The next 12 years, or the next 10 years when we were married, he completely supported me following my that path of healing, returning home, studying, writing a book.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you start this journey. So you've seen this kinesiologist. Within 12 months, you've left real estate to go into kinesiology. How did that feel? Because this is a total change of identity as well, not only within who you are, but the world around you. How did that transition happen, and what did you do to allow that to happen, knowing that it was a deep knowing inside you that was guiding all of these decisions?
It's such a beautiful, I love reflecting back. Like you look back at how things happened, and it was so divinely orchestrated. I met Sharon. Sharon was also seeing this very good friend of mine, who became one of my best friends now. She and I both decided we'd like to study kinesiology. We found a school that was like 5 minutes away in Hawthorne from where we both lived. We both went and studied together. So everything that I look back, I didn't have to seek out. There was no pushing. There was no forcing. It all came to me. Now, I know we haven't started talking about gene keys, but it's a hologenetic profiling system that I've recently introduced you to. And very much my profiling system is all around easy is right. When I go into force, I'm in my shadow. When I'm in strength, things come to me. I'm a magnet for ease. And so that also lends itself to the work that I do now, which is I'm here to help people transition, move, glide through major transitions with ease and grace. That was my intention when I left my marriage. How can we do this? And I said this to my ex-husband, how can we do this with ease and grace? He said, I don't know if that's possible. I said, well, I'm choosing that for us. And so in my work with women, helping them transition, move out of marriages, it has been very much a form of coaching and mediation to help them move, positioning themselves so that it's a child or children first, but giving them the tools and the way of communicating in a way that can support the couples to restore and retain a relationship for the sake of, yes, themselves and each other and the children. So anyway, I've just thrown in the gene keys because it felt present to share that right there. But yeah, so when you come across these things that speak so, it's just so on point to who you are, it's like you feel like it's not just the permission, but it's the validation of everything you know to be true about you're doing. And when you question yourself, for example, I think I'm just going to throw it in here because it feels pertinent, is to follow inner guidance takes a massive amount of courage. When the world, or if you've been used to getting validation or other people telling you, or you seeking because you're afraid of making it. So in my instance, I was afraid of making a mistake or failing again because I had that belief I'm a failure. When you're afraid of making a mistake, then you give your power away to another person or many other people, all of whom have got their limited perspective based on their life story and their history and their genes and yeah. When you give your power away, then you lose connection with what it is that's true for you. But to stay connected and listen to your internal guidance and make choices, even when others are saying no, that's actually, well, why would you stay or go or say yes or say no? Then all of a sudden you've completely lost that connection to your source. And you end up living a life that's not actually your life, not the life that's been designed for you.
But it's interesting because there are some people that I've even just in conversations recently where they know that there's something more for them. They believe that there's something else that they should be doing, but they just don't have the courage to explore that further or to take it to another level. But you did. You got this knowing. Can I just go back? This is interesting. You said that part of it was, and something that you're dealing with, that you felt like a failure. Why did you feel like a failure?
So I felt like a failure because of the meaning that I gave things that happened to me earlier in life. So it's not because of what happened, it was the meaning that I gave it. So I was asked to leave two of the best private girls' schools in Melbourne. And I absolutely meant that I was a failure. Did you not know that?
Okay. I knew you'd left. I didn't know you left too. And I actually don't know why you left.
So, yeah,
imagine what you could have done. Like two schools.
Okay, so I had an issue with authority because I had an issue with my father, I love him dearly now. He was very much an authoritarian figure, and I found it hard being a child of his. So I bucked that. So then I had authority. But the other thing is, which also lends itself back into the gene keys and my specific chart, is I am a seer. So I can go in and I can read a room without even knowing. I'm not even knowing that I'm reading a room, and I'm picking up on things. So I can see when somebody's out of alignment, when they're saying something, but they're not living that. And I'm going to say it's great in some respects and it's not so great in others, because not a lot of people live in integrity with what they say. And I put my hand up. There are times I don't, yeah. So I'm not saying that I'm not sitting on some grand chair saying, yeah, I'm in full integrity. But what I saw in the school system was completely out of integrity, yeah. So I experienced authoritarian figures and the way that they treated children, and I did not respect it or like it. Or they would say something and then they would go back on their word. So that didn't sit well with me. So yes, but I see now, I've always been somebody that's seen things, but I've also been willing to speak up about things. The problem was it was dysfunctional back then, and I got thrown out of schools and then was completely labelled.
Going back to the old labels. The minute that label's put on you, you then have to uphold everything that label entails, because you've got to be true. If I buy the Vegemite, I want Vegemite in the jar. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So you talked about, moving through life with ease and grace, and that easy is right, and that's something for you. You're in real estate, you get out of real estate, you're going down the kinesiologist path, you've talked to your husband about having suffered from bulimia and the vulnerability of sharing that, this is really who I am, and will I still be loved in my true self? Where did it go from there? And you mentioned earlier that, and I'm obsessed with Joe Dispenza and all of his work, Dr. Joe Dispenza. You said you went into a deep meditation and you'd gone from a marriage that by all means was fine, and you went through a meditation, and then on the other end of that, the knowing was that you had to leave. Could you sort of walk through that? Because that's a big, big transition in itself. And yeah, ease and grace and easy is right and all of that. I'd love to find the connection there.
So when we get out of our own way and we actually listen, we don't know. We might know the destination, how we're going to get to the destination is actually where the courage is. So I'm just going to go back. I created a body of work called the Wholehearted Method when I was coaching, when I started coaching 5-6 years ago. I did not know the purpose of that. In my life's work is to live from my whole heart, which makes no sense to the world, because wholehearted living is living moment to moment, not knowing beyond this moment. So I see now that's what I did. I didn't know how to, where to, how this was going to work, how I was going to do it, whether I was going to do it. I literally had that drop in the meditation. I got on the plane. There was a woman that ended up sitting next to me who's now a good friend of mine. She was a relationship coach. She was at the retreat. I'd never met her. She sits in front of me. She didn't plan on talking to anyone on the plane because she had a young child and she just wanted to watch Netflix. I was chatting with another Dr. Joe person that had been on this retreat. She turned around and said, I didn't want to talk because I was here, watching my movies, but I have to talk to you. There was something that was pulling. She ends up coaching me and helped me coach to make sure that I was actually making the right choice. So she helped me transition out of my marriage. Yeah. From that, then I said to myself, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to find a buyer for our home. We're not going to go through the real estate. I just think, even though Rich was working for a local real estate agent, I said, I'm just getting a sense that we're going to find a buyer. Well, guess what? We did. We knew somebody. I took them through. We sold the house privately to them. This is what I mean when you get out of your way and you allow something greater, whatever you want to name it as, universe, love, God, source. There is a higher order to all of this that we're currently experiencing, that when we just take the very next step, that next impulse, that's what courage is. For me, that's what I believe is. So
Mm.
then I had an idea of what the home would be like that I would move into and how the boys would feel and how I would feel. I'm still in that home today. I moved in here and there was 16 applicants, and my mind could have said there's no way I was going to get it. And even though I offered less, I got the house, and I've now been in here 4.5 years. So does that answer your question? And then just from there, everything
Oh, I've
literally works.
just got 1,000 more questions.
Okay.
Mm.
You asked.
Seriously, Lisa, we are not going to do this in in the time frame we need. Tell me, so you go on this retreat, you've probably left to go on the retreat and the relationship is as it was, and then you've come back and then I guess at some point have started the transition out of it. How did Richard take that? And to someone else going through something like this, there's the massive fears, like, how am I going to do this? How would I then become a single parent? What are other people going to think? All the things that riddle and, block us from doing things that would be running through. So how did you do that? And, I'm assuming it wasn't with ease and grace, but how did you do that? How did you navigate it? And how did those around you react to it?
Support. Number one. So number one, I had done so much internal work on not work. I don't even like to use the word. I couldn't dishonor what I was hearing for me. So that was number one. So I had myself. Secondly, I had a lot of support. And anyone that says that they can do it on their own, anyone can do it on their own, I get that. But to retain a relationship with your ex and make it about the kids and not about you, be willing to compromise and communicate your needs, but know that there's going to be a compromise, and it's ultimately about the kids didn't choose this. They did not choose their parents to separate. So how can you make it as easy as possible? Oh, look, there was times it was not easeful. Being a single mother of 3 boys was not easeful. I had 2 boys that were twins that were physical with each other. I had my youngest who really, really hated me for it. But I had a lot of support, a lot of support. So I had professional support, and then I had a very close circle of friends. They're in my women's circle. We've been in this circle together for about 6 years together, 7 years. They were very much my support. I wasn't asking for guidance. I was from my profession. So anyone that says, I've got all my friends around me, I actually think that that's not a great option. I think your friends are there to love you professionally, to support you moving through that. Your friends can't do that. And I don't think it's fair to ask them to do it. So that was key, the support. And I used all my tools in the box. So I found it impossible to meditate. I couldn't sit with the grief and the fear and the shame and the guilt and the worry. So I used movement. I used dance. I'd come back to loving dance again. So I used music and movement and dance. There were times that I was on the biggest high. I'd clean out my front room downstairs in our marital home, and I would literally for an hour and a half in the morning, Richard would go off to work. He'd be like, "Oh, how lucky for you." Well, it wasn't great, because I'd be riding on the floor one moment, just like howling, like, how can I possibly do this? And the next there would just be this freedom, this elation, and the knowingness that, this is absolutely not just for me, this is for us. Because we think, well, some people get stuck and think, how could I do this to the other person? And actually, it's 2 people that are ultimately unhappy in a relationship or happy together. It's not one. So I can say now, my ex-husband, I think he's way happier in his relationship. He's in a relationship with a woman that's very well suited to him. And I wanted that for him because I couldn't give that to him any longer.
Wow.
I
Okay.
don't know how we
Gee. Yeah.
yeah. So that's what helped me. Does that answer the question that you had? I go, does the thing with
Yeah.
marriage go down different?
No, no, it's perfect. It's perfect because yeah, and just tell me, what about, you obviously weren't held back by, but did you have to do some work, like put in the effort around what others would think of you? Would you be judged from those around you who wouldn't have understand from the place you were making this decision? So
Mm.
family and other friends that weren't in your circle. How did you deal? Because I'm assuming that they would have seen happy marriage, leaving it, what's going on?
So my friends, there was no that I was aware of, as in my close circle of friends, there was no one judging. Who knows the wider or the wider net? But I didn't. That was not my business. I mean, the thing is, when you're going through something so major than that, you don't. I wasn't concerned. I was so just going through what I was going through that to have that to really care, and I'm sure there would be a lot of people, I get that would care about what other people think. I'd done quite a lot of work on that aspect of caring what another person thinks of me. It came back to, what do I think of me? And I did have, and bless my mum and dad, and I love them. My relationship with my parents is the best it's ever been. The best. I, I mean, we can go through life and we think that they're all of these things, and then you get cracked open and go, wow, they actually really loved me the whole way along. I just couldn't see it. I had judgment and resentment and all this sort of stuff. And so 2023 has been a mammoth year in completely reshaping and realizing my relationship, particularly with my mum and also with my dad. But just going back to, I've just lost my train of thought. You asked me about, but at the time, yes, my family, particularly my mum and dad, they really struggled with it. And I realize now it was because I feel, I don't know this for fact, that they were just worried. How would I go on my own? Yeah. Because before I met Rich, it was like I was a damsel in distress to some degree. That's what I think my dad felt like I was saved by Rich, and I was, married by a lovely man who was responsible and kind, and he's all of those things. So I think there was a lot of fear around, how would I go as a single mother? What was I doing? Was I going back to that young girl that was just crazy and rebellious and hadn't really thought this out? So that they were the only people in my world that actually I felt their their judgment. And and I voiced
Yeah.
it. I said, this is not okay. We had many heated conversations where I was like, this is not okay, and this is my life, and I'm not choosing to stay in a relationship because I should, um, as much as a lot of the world choose to do that.
Yeah, that's courage in itself, isn't it? I don't care by anyone's definition. I think most people could look into that however they choose to, but from a lens of, that's courage, honoring you. So just before, and I really want to explore this Gene Keys piece too, but after you started the kinesiology, and as you said, even before the transition out of marriage, you really became so aware of who you are and what you needed. What other things did you do to get to that place? Like, so yes, you're studying kinesiology, but what else did you do? So I'm thinking about someone listening in who might even only be starting their journey,
Mm,
just for some of the ways that you, albeit everyone's journey is different, but
mm,
what were some of the ways that you
mm,
explored to come to the level of understanding of who you are, like you do right
mm.
now? What did you do?
So I was like a sponge. So once that opened up, I was like, okay, here's me. But I was a seeker, and I realize now, upon reflection, I was still seeking to fix me. Yeah, it was like, oh, and I've got all these things, but it wasn't from a, there's nothing to fix. It was still from the pattern which Sharon, my kinesiologist, had said, which is there's nothing to fix. I was still, okay, so I'm no longer bulimic, but now I'm going to perfect. I'm going to get myself right. I'm going to become. So it was almost I became self-righteous on the whole spiritual path. I'm going to be enlightened, and I know this. And then I'd started to coach. No one was asking me for my advice, but it was totally unwarranted. But I had to go through that journey. So what happened was there was at the time Louise Hay. I'm sure a lot of people would have heard of Louise Hay. She was still running these weekend events called I Can Do It. And so all these amazing speakers from all over the world and authors of Hay House would come over to Australia. And so Emma and I, one of my closest friends, would go to them. We travelled to Maui to study A Course in Miracles. I wrote a book. I studied EFT, emotional freedom therapy, which is an amazing modality which incorporates the mind and body and has been used for a whole host of different things. Have you heard of EFT? Have you heard?
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. I went and studied
Yes.
theta. I went and studied theta healing. Anything that kind of dropped in, and I was like, oh, I would then go and study. So I read countless books. I literally was led by my heart. Something would drop in and I'd go and act on it. And then something else would arrive and I'd go and follow that. So all of it, I'm not going to say it's all necessary, but all of it ultimately says the same thing, or is guiding us home to self. All of it. And not just that, come home to self, and also know that these small minds in our bodies are a very small aspect of who we really are.
Oh, I absolutely love this. And oh man, I've got so many vibes going through me just hearing all of this. So you've alluded to gene keys a number of times. Firstly, what is it? For those that don't know, I know you have shared it with me and I'm now obsessed. Secondly, where did it come from? Like, how did that come into your life? And what has it done? What journey has it taken you on? What insights? What has it provided you? Because I still feel you've got so much passion around it and connection to it. So how did it come into your life? What has it done to you, and what is it?
Okay. So it's a hologenetic profiling system. So it takes where you were born, the time you were born, and your name, and it literally gives you insight, deep insights into what they call an activation sequence. So what you're here to activate to bring about your life's purpose, which is actually your life's purpose is you being the beingness of who you're here to be. Yeah, we don't think about that. We think about what we're here to do, but the purpose is actually in this profiling system is who we're here to be. There's also an activation sequence for what we're here to do in the world. And to bring about prosperity. And we think of prosperity as money, but no, it's actually, it's the way in which we engage with the world and what we're here to bring, but it's also how we're here to prosper. And so, for example, some of us are here to prosper by bringing money and wealth into the world and to celebrate it. Others, like me, are here to do it, but to do it for charity reasons. I've always known I'm a humanitarian for many years, and it's in my chart. It's like, there you go, tick. You know that is true for you. And there's also, which is fascinating, what they call the Venus sequence, which is how you're here to activate yourself in love and relationships. And so this profiling system, it's very hard to explain. But once you get your own profile and you get to see, what it shows you is that these genes are here to be unlocked. And what I mean by that is, inside of us, there is the shadow aspect. So we want to call it the egoic aspect of us. But on the same spectrum, there's also the possibility to unlock the gift, which Richard Rudd, who's the founder, calls it the city. So, for example, my life's work, the shadow of it is half-heartedness. The gift is devotion. So to be half-hearted, which is I spend a lot of my life is going in and out, starting something, ending it. Yeah, that's half-hearted. That's also, so those of us who have this in our chart have a deep fear of commitment. Devotion is the ultimate. Devotion is the ultimate commitment to the moment. And that's what my life's doing. So do you see that that's just explaining to somebody, just to show you that in every gene, we can either be operating and functioning from the lower frequency, it's essentially a lower frequency of the ego, the mind. And when we unlock it, we unlock the frequency, so we're operating from a state of, well, for me, pure devotion. So I'm fully devoted to being here. So right here, right now, I don't even know where we're going with this. I'm fully present, looking at you. I don't even know what words are coming out. I'm just trust. I'm in such a state of now here. Now, this doesn't happen all the time, but when I'm in a state of full presence and I'm in joy and I'm out of my mind, there's nothing to prove, there's nothing to do. I don't need to work it out. So that's, anyway, I just wanted to give people an insight into what that is. And so there's all these genes to unlock, and essentially it's to bring about that. It's not for self. This is what I love about the gene keys. It's actually for the collective. Because when we unlock our genes, we're actually doing it for the collective.
And that means the broader population.
It means everyone. Because as I move from my ego to a state of love, ultimately we're here to be of service to humanity. Even if you're not a humanitarian at heart, we are here for each other, not for self. We're here to evolve the collective. So when we get out of our own way and we realize that each choice we make, we're moving from fear or love, or from shadow, from gift, life becomes a whole lot easier.
And knowing this, how has it changed what you do or how you go about life with this knowledge that, had you not done Gene Keys, you might have had some of this knowing anyway, but this has given it like a framework and a validation.
Yeah.
Or has it? And how is it playing out? Like what benefit does it bring to your everyday through this knowledge?
So the point of the Gene Keys is to use it. And Richard Rudd says it's not something to meditate on. It's not something you'll get. It's a contemplation. Your chart, I will contemplate, I imagine, for the rest of my life, because there's so much in it. What it's done for me in the past 3 years, I was introduced by a coach I was working with, and I was like, wow. And once I get onto something, and I've got to go down this rabbit hole. And then I worked with a woman who's now a friend of mine, a South African woman who was a Dr. Joe student. She came to work with me 12 months ago because she wanted to develop her voice, and she'd watched me online and sharing, easily. She was deep into Gene Keys, and she had an incredible understanding of it. So she said, as a gift for me, that she would delve into mine and sort of start to unpack. So because I was working with her, I'd been introduced, I was already, looking at it and contemplating it myself. It just added a whole nother layer. And then now I have it all printed out. I know a lot of my shadows. I'll get an insight and go, I wonder if that was just happening. So I'll go back to my chart. I'm seeing the way things have been playing out more recently in my relationships. It's just such a great visual for me to remind myself, am I coming from my shadow, which is not what I'm here to do in this life. I'm here to unlock my greatest potential and be the most loving and of service for the world. So I can now see much more clearly when I'm in my shadow. I can see upon reflection, looking back at my life, how things have played out, how I've lived half-heartedly, how that set me up to think that I'm a failure because I haven't followed through on things. Yeah. So it's all there. It also gives me such great reminder. So when somebody's saying, oh no, go and do this, or this is the way you should build your business, and in my chart it's like, actually no, one of the things in my chart, for example, and I don't want to, but I just really want to presence how accurate it can be. In my chart, it talks about that I'm here to build connection that my net worth is in my network. And so for me to go out, a network is not 5,000 people. It's a small, solid network of people that like, know, and trust me, and that I like, know, and trust, that I can refer, I can do business with, I can do life with. So when you come into, say, real estate, for example, and most of the real estate industry is all about, door knocking and cold calling, and in my heart and and I don't want to use my chat, but I'm like, that is actually, I know that I can create and build and generate a beautiful, beautiful business that is about building connections, building my network, and I don't have to necessarily, well, it's actually out of alignment for me to do it any other way. And it's inauthentic. So to stay true to that takes courage.
Oh, so much courage. So much courage. And I know you have introduced me to Gene Keys and have been giving me some guidance, and this has only been over literally a couple of months, and already the insight or oh my goodness, that the epiphanies that have come from it just have been so spot on. It's almost scary, isn't it, Lisa, to think that there is something that has a greater knowledge of you than you, that is just so profound and so real. And definitely, even in the short period that I've been exploring it and through your beautiful assistance and guidance, it's been quite mind-blowing, to be honest, because my mind can't always get around how, with the data from the time I came onto this planet and the name I was given, how does that data reflect so accurately the way that my life is playing out? And yeah.
And then that is a whole other conversation. We think we know so much, and we don't know much at all.
No. It's so true. It's so true. And you would attest that if anyone does want to get a Gene Keys reading, it's free and it's online.
Yeah.
Like
yeah,
it's even just at a very, very high level.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm one of those people that will do a profile on anything, like what kind of cheese are you, or what kind of, and sometimes taking that on board too much. But I think when you've got this knowledge and you use it as a guidance system, as a bit of a framework for, as you say, when something is out of alignment, and this kind of gives you that, not the scientific approach, but it sort of gives you more of the logical reasoning why, because it's all linked back to what's come through your Gene Keys, which is just fascinating. So you have gone back into real estate, and I do know that. Did that happen? How did that happen?
I swore I would never go back into the industry. I had a coaching business. As I said earlier, I got really unwell, and during that time it was rest. That's all I heard. And then literally real estate. I had a conversation with my ex-husband about it, and then it just kept coming through, and I went, okay, I had a conversation with mum and dad. And I had a conversation with a few of my very close friends, and they're like, oh my God, Lisa, that is it. That's where you need to be. And I'd never had that from my friends. They were not like, yes, go down that. But it was just, I was kind of looking around going, wow, okay, this is really interesting. I've had this idea. It's not from my mind. It was literally kind of came through me, similar to what happened when I was up at this Dr. Joe retreat. So I followed this. I went, okay, what does that look like? Okay, I'm going to reach out to the people that I like, know, and trust, that I know from the industry that I used to work with or knew. And all of the meetings and conversations were so like, oh yeah, Lisa. It was just so affirmative. And I had numerous people say, oh, would you like to? Almost sort of offers, but I was not close to it. And then one of my close friends, Emma, who I study kinesiology with, and her husband's in real estate with my ex-husband, she said to me, what about Shelter? And Shelter is run by a female that I used to work with, but she wasn't in the same office. I jumped online, looked at Shelter, and their values were on the website. I went, what is that about? Be a good human, enjoy life, make a difference. that's. So I reached out to her, ended up having a coffee with her, and was offered a job within 2 weeks. So it was so effortless and easeful that I didn't consider or didn't even think, is this the right thing? It was just, okay, I had the conversation, saw it, had the conversation, and that followed the path. I knew I wanted to be part of an agency that was small. I didn't want a big business. I certainly wanted something that understood about being a female in an industry that is not, I mean, we appreciate women, but ultimately it's most of them are run by men, as much as I love men, and I'm not anti-men at all. But there's not, the reality is women are not, they are in shelter, but they're not respected or valued or seen for the incredible way that we operate, and we don't have to do, and we're actually not meant to do it the man's way. Like, so for me, what I see is I have an incredible opportunity is to stay true to me, which is I'm highly, highly intuitive, which has taken years to come back. We're all intuitive. So I can read situations. I'm not afraid to ask questions. I'm not afraid to communicate the things that I used to be afraid of, because I've had hard conversations, and that takes courage. So now the conversation, say, for example, with somebody you're selling for, I will never be afraid again of having those conversations and sharing exactly where we're at. Whereas in the past I might have been, or to ask a prospective buyer, to really delve in and to get intimate with buyers, which is the ultimate key for success in sales, is to get intimate with buyers and sellers. Now, that takes a lot of courage, because you've got to be intimate with self in order to be able to be intimate with another and ask those questions. And so I really see, and I know there are women already doing this in the industry, but I get now why I had to go on this journey. This incredibly deep, rich, scary, at times massively challenging, hard chapter, in order to come back into an industry that really does need still a big shake-up. Because the old way of doing business, and I'm not saying certainly it's different in this office this business that I'm working in. But overall, there is a lot of opportunity. That's what I want to say. There's a lot of opportunity to do things in a really beautiful, heartful way, and that doesn't mean soft. That doesn't mean that owners are not going to get amazing results. In fact, they can get record-breaking results by doing business this way, and having somebody that's highly intuitive and perceptive and is able to meet prospective buyers and them in a very different way, where you can get the most out of it and mediate for the best possible result. Essentially, that's what this is all about. So,
Oh, that is so powerful, and such a refreshing way of looking at, say, a real estate, which has been traditionally male dominated, and very much the masculine qualities that we associate with result and push and hustle, and the reputation. My in-law has been there for a long time, so very, very close and familiar with it. But there is a different way, and I guess you even going back to even when you're at school, and I still think that's hilarious that you were kicked out of 2 schools. And I say that I'm sure it was quite painful at the time, but I just don't see you as the kind of person that does it. But again, pushing against the authority around how things have been done, to say and to question, there is another way of doing this. There is another way to still get those beautiful, magical results that the owners and there's still the reality. We need the commercial side of it, but doing it from a different perspective, doing it from within the heart, from an intuitive place, and far more intimate. I love the word intimate. It doesn't have to be romantic, but just intimate in relationship, I just think just golden. So, oh, Lisa, just beautiful.
And I also think the other thing that's been coming through since I've returned to real estate is, I've come into an office which is in Glen Iris, and with the intention to go back to the area that I was working in previously, which is Burundara, Hawthorne Q, all around that area. And what has been coming through more and more, and I'm like, now I'm owning it, is who says Who says you have to work in any one area? That is the way of the real estate world, that you work in a local office and you work in a local area and you farm and you become the specialist in one area. And I have just been getting, no. And this is the beauty of working for a small business, which is just opened an office in Bayside as well, is I don't have to be working in any one area to be able to sell or buy a home for anyone. Because the way that the world is with technology is realestate.com attracts buyers, yeah? If you're looking for a home, that's where you're looking. You don't walk into your local real estate agent and go, what properties are you selling, and let me and get in my car and drive you around. So I just keep getting, I'm client led. I will be led, and the right clients, the right fit clients are looking for what I have to offer will be led to me. I don't need to go and force myself out into the world and go and find that we will find each other, and it will be a right match, and there'll be nothing to prove, because we'll know, they'll know, I know that I'm the right person for them in order to help them transition, and it doesn't matter about area. So that excites me, because I like the idea of not having to work in just one area.
And isn't there something rewarding about saying, hey, I love this industry, I love what they're trying to do, but how can I do it in a way that I can use the word, I love the idea of, like, using the word love. I love the word love, not just, I've got to do it because that's the way it's always been done and that's the status quo, but how can I take this thing and a different place, challenging the old way? Oh, just beautiful. Oh my gosh, just beautiful. Oh, Lisa, I can't believe it. We're going to have to wind up, because some people might not be driving for this long and get it in one hit. Can I just ask, with such incredible wisdom and the going back to going back home, like to who you are really at a core, for anyone else out there who, like I said, is starting on this journey, or maybe hasn't even thought about it, or there's something you've said today that they've gone, oh, yeah, I want to know more. What advice would you give?
What is one thing that you can take from today? So what is the thing that stands out from all the things that we've talked about? And go and take that and take one step. So if that's it, say for Jean, please, go and organise a free profile. I might have dropped about conversation. Courage is in conversations. Is there a conversation that you're afraid to have, or you're not having? Is there one thing that you're not being honest? Like, ask yourself that question: where am I not being honest with myself? Ask that. Let yourself hear it for yourself first. That's not saying you have to go and. It's just that one micro step will change everything. It will change everything. We think it's about taking massive steps, but one small step will change the course of your life.
That is beautiful. That is beautiful. What's your next small step you need to take?
I am taking a break. My next small step is to take a break now that I've cut. So we're office is closing down for 4 weeks. And because I've been come back in and I've been adjusting, and I know I've spent more time in my head than my heart. So my next step, next courageous step, is to completely tune out of all the things that my mind has been trying to work out, and give myself 2 weeks. And inside that 2 weeks, I met somebody in all my travels and networking in the past 6 weeks, this beautiful man who is the executive director of a BNI. I happened to go to a BNI and I was like, why am I here? This is not for me. And in the end, I find out that this guy that's turned up, that's chatting, I was just kind of like, where is this guy? Happens to be the executive director of the BNI, who's just come back from a Dr. Joe event retreat from overseas. I go, that's the reason I'm in this room. Can I get his number? I ring him. We caught up for coffee last week, had the most beautiful 2 hours together. Amazing. And then he gifted me all these meditations and a 4-day program. So that is my next courageous step, is to sit down and do this 8-hour program over 4 days. And let's see it's called Unlocked. Let's see what's unlocked in this program.
And maybe a little romance.
No. As he calls himself, I'm the queen of all queens. So
Okay. So this is a professional one. Oh, I love that though. But I love that you got to the B. No, you weren't meant to be there, but you actually were meant to be there, but it wasn't for what you thought you were meant to be there for. Beautiful. Lisa, if anyone wants to follow along, know a little bit more about you, your journey, where do I direct them?
So I haven't been present on social media, but I will be as of next year. So just under Lisa Britcliffe, Britcliffe. You'll have to follow that in the show notes.
I will.
And if you want to reach out, you can email me. Will you put that email in? You can, if they want to know anything more about what I'm doing, or they want to connect with me, whether they've got somebody that's going through this, or they've got a friend, or they're looking to sell any and all the above, they can email me. That's probably the best bet.
Excellent. And all the details will be in the show notes. Lisa, thank you. Like I said, I'm cutting this so short because this really would be a couple of days if we were allowed to keep going. Thank you. Your wisdom is incredible, your knowledge, and returning to who you are from a place of love. Oh, wow. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much. I have so enjoyed this conversation, Kim. It's been beautiful. I hope everyone takes something small away.
I'm sure they will. Thank you.